This is a free lesson from the Photography Masterclass, which has over 20 hours of amazing content to help you become a better photographer. And if you like this video and want to take better photos, click on the link in the description to get an amazing discount.
Welcome to the portrait scenario. I'm going to run through how to take a portrait in this specific setting. Along with using the tips that Phil talked about earlier, we're going to run through those tips and apply them to taking a portrait to make your portraits look better. So let's go ahead and get started. I have my X-T2 here. I have everything on auto right now. It is totally autoed up. It's zero exposure compensation, and I'm on my kit lens. It's an 18-55. I'm just going to go ahead and just aim at Phil where he's standing and take a picture. All right, so there's our portrait. So let's take a look at this photo. I'm at a 23mm on my 18-55 kit zoom lens. It's on my crop sensor X-T2. This would just be your typical way to pick up a camera and take a portrait. Now, it's not great. It's fine. It's a picture of Phil. It's not the best we can do. There's an orange cone in the background. There is a bright white light on the right side. Phil's just hanging out. It's okay, but it's not great. So let's start with the basic settings that I would use to shoot a nice portrait. For starters, I'm gonna get rid of this lens and I'm gonna use a prime lens. I'm gonna use my 56mm on a crop sensor, which is more like an 85mm. So let's start with that. All right, I've got my 56mm and I'm gonna shoot at an f1.4. That's mainly the reason I switched to this lens, as well as its length. It's gonna create some more depth of field. Now we're still on auto other than the f-stop, which I've changed to a 1.4. So we're gonna have to step back a little bit. All right, so let's take a look at this picture. Now the fall off in the background is way more out of focus. It looks a little bit more professional. We're still getting that cone in the background though, which is pretty ridiculous. The camera itself has chosen 850th of a shutter and an ISO of 200, which I'm okay with. So we'll go ahead and leave it like that. I do feel like it's a little bright, so I'm gonna go ahead and use my exposure compensation to come down to -1, to come down a stop basically. So let's take another shot. Good job, Phil. All right, so take a look at this photo. It's a little bit darker. It's a little bit getting more in line with what my style is. Again, we're dealing with that bright spot on the far right, and we're dealing with that cone, and Phil's just kind of standing there. So let's apply our tips. To start with, choose a better background. Let's get rid of that cone. Now, we're in a really nice naturey park. There's a really beautiful tree over here, so let's move over there. That's good, cool. Come on over. All right, so now we're in a new position. The background looks good. I have the same settings. I'm at a 1.4 on my 56mm on my crop sensor. I'm an auto ISO. It's giving me a 1600 right now. Oh, 200. And I'm on auto shutter. So let's go ahead and take this look with our exposure at -1. All right, so I put him with the sun in the background, and that's one of our tips. Try to get the sun in the background. It gives a really nice light coming around his shoulders, separating him from the background. Now, this is now a little too dark because there's so much brightness in the background and it's shaded here. So our exposure compensation is overcompensating at this point. So we're gonna go ahead and shift that back down to 0. In fact, we might bring that all the way up to +1 now because we're in the shade. So let's take a look at that. We're at +1 on exposure compensation. It's selecting a 750th shutter and 200 ISO. There we go. It's a little bit better, a little bit brighter. The background's out of focus, and the sun has a really nice backlight on Phil, you can see here. We're in the shade, so you can see the soft light coming from outside the shade in on Phil's face. Now let's talk about composition. So the fun thing about composition is you can really change things other than just dead centering your subject. Get closer, get further, add negative space. You know, play around with your compositions. Once you have him in a nice setting and the background's good, go ahead and try it out. So let's play around with some of our compositions. I'm just gonna have Phil stand there for now, and we'll adjust him later. He's hanging out, hanging out. All right, so now you can see that I've really messed around with changing the compositions. I went from horizontal to vertical. I also put him on a far left side of the screen. I put him on the far right side of the screen. I played with some negative space above his head. I played with some trees in the background here. It's really fun. You can really find the composition that works for you per your style once you get them in the right setting and you have the right exposure set in your camera. So now let's go ahead and start positioning him in different poses that we might like. This is going to take you a lot of experience, and each person actually looks better in a different pose. So what I like to do is starting out is having Phil just squaring off to me. Go ahead and square off to me, Phil. Bring your left shoulder towards me. Yeah, but keep your eyes on me. Great. Now bring your face down, tilt down, perfect. Now that's a really quick way of posing somebody very quickly. Another thing I like to do is having them sit down. Do you mind sitting down for me, Phil? So basically I'm gonna be looking down on him. It's a much nicer, flattering shot. We still have him backlit by the sun. I'm gonna have him bring his knees up so he can rest on his knees. This is really good for actors and headshots. All right, so we're back at our home camp here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the photos that we shot of Phil once we started messing around with composition and posing. You can see I had him sit down here on the ground and he's looking up. Again, once you have the backlight set up, the exposure set, you can really play around with compositions and posing. It's much more flattering to have someone look up at you. You can see I played with composition in this one as well. He's to the far right. In this one, I had him looking right up at me. You can see that he's smiling and laughing a little bit. It's a pretty good shot. Really like classic headshot that may work for actors or corporate headshots. Now take a look at these. I put him in the trees here, and you can see I got a little bit of flare on my lens. That's kind of some fun magical things you can do with a portrait, especially when you're using the sun to backlight them. Again, I had a ton of fun messing with the compositions. I moved his face all the way over to the right. At other times, I moved it all the way over to the left. You can see the background is really out of focus, and that's because we're using that prime lens and we were shooting at a 1.4, and that's a long prime lens. Now see, as we cycle through a couple of these, I had him not smiling, and then sort of smiling, and then like a full-blown laugh smile. And was talking to him a little bit and trying to make him laugh. It really makes the photo look a little bit more dynamic. You can see in this one, he's not smiling, and then we had him look in a different direction, and he has a little bit of a smile. Changing your subject's face can really change the photo immensely. So let's compare this very last one with him just right here looking off into the distance with the very first shot we took. The very first shot we took was just all on auto, just right up front, taking the camera, shooting, not really thinking about it until we applied our tips and we applied the lessons that we've learned in this class. Basically, we've gone from 0 to hero very quickly by just changing a few things like the lens, the f-stop, the positioning, the sun. And now keep in mind, you can still do a lot of these things without buying big, expensive lenses and stuff. You can shoot at a longer lens. We talked about the depth of field changing when you shoot with a longer zoom lens, opening up your f-stop all the way, and then just positioning a person in the right spot at the right time. That's a big deal that will improve your photography quite a bit.
Thanks again for watching this free lesson from the Photography Masterclass. We hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, we have the full class ready and available for you to watch right now. So if you want to take better videos, click on the link in the description to get an amazing discount. The original Photography Masterclass was taken by over 150,000 amazing students who have gone on to become professional photographers and win photography competitions using the skills learned in the class. And this class is a complete redo that is better than ever with more content that will help you take better photos. Again, if you like this video and you want over 20 additional hours of lessons and content just like this that will help you take better photos than ever before, click on that link in the description and enroll in the class. We can't wait to see you inside.